Hi everybody. I wanted to give another update for how things are going now. If you haven't watched last week's video, I recommend you probably do that first, just so you know kind of what I'm talking about. We left off on that video with I had some bleeding again, thought I was going to go in the hospital potentially, but my doctors said that they were going to continue my oral antibiotic for a week, and then I was going to stop some of my treatments and kind of add them back on. And so when I made the last video, I wasn't back to my full treatment set yet. And so the day after that, I added on one of my medications called Pulmosal, which is basically just salt water, kind of. It's sodium chloride, I'm pretty sure. And it works by drawing fluid into the lungs, and then it helps thin your mucus to help clear it. But it can be really irritating, and so I did that one the day after the last video, and I had a little bit of bleeding again, and it was very late. It was like streaks, but it was a bummer. And so I was kind of in this place where, once again, it's like, do I start back at ground zero and stop all my treatments and continue them over the course of 3 days if there's no more bleeding? Or because it's such light bleeding, should I do some of my treatments and see if that impacts it in a negative way or not? And so that's what I did. I did a couple of my treatments. I did one of my nebulized meds and then my percussor. And sure enough, I still had streaks for a couple of days. So I'm like, okay, I do need to start at ground zero. I didn't do any treatments for a day or two. And then I started kind of adding things back on. And it was going really well. I didn't have any bleeding for like 4 days. And I even jogged on one day yesterday for like 2.5 miles or something. And I thought that was kind of a big test. I was like, well, if I jog, sorry, I just bumped the camera. If I jog and I don't have bleeding, that'll be a great sign. And that's what happened. I jogged 2.5 miles and I didn't have any bleeding. I'm like, awesome. And then this morning, I finally added that Pulmosal back in again. I had kind of held off because I was nervous since it caused it last time. Would it do it today? And sure enough, I did it this morning, and I had a little bit of streaks again, and when I cough stuff up. And so it was a bummer. But it was super, super light, and it stopped pretty much immediately. So once again, I'm playing the same game of like, do I do my treatments today? Probably not, but like, stopping everything doesn't really do my lungs any favors either from an infection standpoint. So yeah, we're just kind of back in this cycle of how to handle this. And it's just so much guessing, because even when I talk to my doctors, there's so much kind of wiggle room. And so it's kind of like, try this or try that and see what happens. And that's kind of where we are. So one kind of interesting thing is, my dietitian called this morning and said that she wanted to know how much vitamin K is in my multivitamin, which sounds super random. But with CF, because we don't absorb the nutrients in our food very well, because our bodies don't make enough enzymes, most of us, digestive enzymes, we often don't absorb fat very well. And a lot of us take like pills that are digestive enzymes that we take with our food. But there are vitamins that everybody needs in their body that are considered to be fat soluble, which means that you have to be able to absorb fat in order to absorb those vitamins. And those are vitamins A, D, E, and K. And so a lot of the CFers will take supplements for a lot of those vitamins, or it's maybe in a multivitamin altogether with kind of higher doses of those things. With vitamin K, it actually impacts how well your body clots. And so if your vitamin K is low, it can make it so that you're bleeding more easily or longer. And so they actually were recommending to me that I take an additional vitamin K supplement to kind of shorten my bleeding time as far as how long it'll take to form a clot, in hopes that might help. So we'll see. Like, we'll try anything at this point to kind of, it's worth a shot to see if that helps. I'll give you an update and let you know either way. So that's basically where I am health-wise. I still feel good. Like I felt good pretty much this, throughout the whole bleeding problem thing. So, which is like confusing, but I'm taking it as a win. I'm feeling grateful that at least I'm feeling well, even though kind of weird things are happening. Yeah, so that's basically the update with that. There's no like great segue for this, so this is like a total left-hand turn. But last night I got my hair done, like trimmed and highlighted, and I went to see the lady that does my hair, is a neighbor and like a friend, and I so enjoy our conversations. Like I joke that I should probably call her my hairapist, because we have just the best conversations every time I'm there. And we were talking a little bit, and she kind of gave some interesting feedback about, she had listened to some of the podcast episodes, and then she watched the video last week. And she said that with the podcast episodes, they are kind of easy to listen to because there's not a lot of breaks, and it's kind of well thought out and very kind of almost curated, so it's easy for the listener. And with the video, she said she enjoyed that because it was kind of more raw and authentic. And I do have to kind of think through what I'm saying sometimes. And she said that was kind of interesting to see too. So let me know what your take is on that, I guess. The other things I was going to share are, I had a really interesting conversation with Chad a couple days ago. And we were talking about something, and Chad was kind of saying that, he pictured kind of different ages of his life for different phases or different accomplishments or different goals. And like, I'm sure so many people have the exact same kind of thought process. Like your 20s and 30s are for, whatever, having fun or getting married or raising kids. And then your 40s and 50s are designated for this. And then your 60s and 70s are designated for that. And it just kind of hit me that, like, I'm sure he grew up thinking, well, I'm going to live to be 80. And so I can kind of plan out the phases of my life and what I'd like to accomplish, or what I'd like that to look like, or even just my daily life, what I want that to look like. And for me, it's just so funny because I obviously never grew up thinking like, well, I'm going to live to be 80 and so I can plan out all these things in my life. It's like, well, no, if I can graduate high school, like, that'll be amazing. And then once I did that, it was like, okay, well, if I can like do college, that would be great. And then it's like, and if I can get married, oh my gosh, that'd be fantastic. And then if I can have kids, that would be amazing. It was always just, I never had the expectation that it would happen. It was just always like exciting if and when it did happen. And it's funny how CF changed my thought process as compared to seemingly most people. And what's interesting too is like, once I started Trikafta, so much of that changed. Like, not to say I'm for sure living to be 80, but I do think it's likely lengthened my life to some extent. And what does that mean for how I think about my future? And like, instead of like short-term goals, which I've kind of always had more short-term goals, and just kind of the general goal of fit as much life into the life you're given. Like, I don't know how long it's going to be, so like get it all in. Whatever you can, do it now, because you might not have later. Which, I mean, in general is kind of I feel like it's a good way to look at things, because no one knows how long they really will have. But it's like I still am coming to terms with like how to think about the future, because potentially it's changed in a lot of ways. So I thought that was kind of interesting to share. The other thing is, we were talking in that same conversation, is just like how grateful we are that I'm on Trikafta. And if you think about when we were thinking about it, it was like I had COVID and RSV within 2.5 weeks of each other, and I didn't end up in the hospital. And while I still have that potential, depending on how this whole bleeding thing turns out, like I would have been guaranteed to be in the hospital pre-Trikafta. and I probably would have been very sick, maybe on oxygen, like who knows. So I think it just gives really good perspective, because it's like, yes, is my health not in an ideal situation right now? Are there elements of it I wish I could improve and change? Yeah, but it could be so much worse. It really could be. And so, I don't know, I'm just trying to focus on that I'm so grateful that I feel good right now. Like, that's a huge plus. So yeah, just wanted to share that. So if you guys have listened to any of my podcast episodes or watched like even last week's video, I love to like give little pearls of wisdom, I guess, on here that are absolutely not mine. They are not my original, ideas or anything, but I basically just like regurgitate whatever I've heard recently that I thought was kind of, I don't know, interesting to share, I guess. So I listened to a podcast recently because I love my podcasts, and there was a lady on there talking about this book called The Power of Now. And I haven't read it. It's on my Amazon list, but I haven't read it. But she was kind of trying to summarize kind of the gist of the book. And she said that if you focus on the past, and whether that be the negative things about the past that make you sad or angry, or the great things about the past that you wish you had and you don't now, it can really cause depression. It tends to lead to depression when you're kind of focused there. And when you're focused on the future and worrying about what's to come, constantly trying to plan for however things may play out, you tend to be anxious and have anxiety. And I just totally related to both pieces of that. And I believe she said that the book is basically teaching how to kind of remain more in the moment, I guess, and focused on being content with where you are right this minute. And I just felt, I don't know, connected to that idea, I guess, where my goal, because I always have goals, my goal is to be better about trying to be more in the moment and not so focused on mostly the future for me, but sometimes even the past. And I think the best way for me to do that personally is to be super focused on what I'm grateful for right now. Nothing, your life doesn't have to be perfectly ideal to find like contentment. And I don't know, I just thought that was a good goal, something to kind of consider, I guess, for me. So thought I'd share that. The only other thing I really have is to let you know about my YouTube channel. If you happen to have a YouTube account, I think it's Tracy Jones Breathing It Out Vlog, because I figured that I'll come on here periodically and give little updates. It's kind of like a video diary, I guess, but just a good way to kind of keep people updated with what's going on. And I'm not sure yet how often. It might be once a week, it might be every couple of weeks. I want to make sure I have something substantial to share. So I don't want to just be like, well, I said I'm going to come on every week and I have crap to share. That's wasting your time and my time. So I want to make sure I have good updates and info for you. But yeah, that's basically it for today. It's funny, in watching myself while I'm recording this, it reminds me of when I watched last week's video. I am such a nonverbal communicator. So like, I can't go 2 seconds without doing something with my hands or my face. So sorry if that's annoying. I don't know how to stop it. And Chad makes fun of me all the time because he says if I had to like sit on my hands, I'd be mute or something. I can't communicate without giving you nonverbal. So sorry, not sorry, I guess. Yeah, thanks everybody. See you next time.